Good morning, but I do think you chose the right topic. And I'll tell you why. So some of you know who my father is. He's been in ministry, speaking, writing, debating, over 50 years. Written over 150 books. And I heard my father say something with a lot of wisdom and experience. He says, I really believe that Satan's greatest tool, wreaking havoc not only on the culture, but on the church, is pervasive pornography. I really think it's not doubts, although we saw yesterday how important the mind is, that we know what we believe and why. When it's all said and done, I think this issue of morality, in fact, through the vein of pornography, is one of the most powerful tools Satan is using to wreak havoc on the joy of your faith, wreak havoc on your worldview. So given how much is at stake in this topic, let's just begin by prayer and then we'll dive in. All right? Father, we thank you for this conference. Just the opportunity to be here, to worship, to learn, to grow, to fellowship, to have fun. I pray this morning in this topic, which can be heavy, yet it's so important, that we just approach this with wisdom and with consideration. And God, open our hearts and open our minds to think Christianly about this. And ultimately to lead the lives of holiness that you desire for us to live. And we commit this time to you. In Jesus' name, amen. I'll never forget a young man that I met. Grew up in a Christian home, went to a Christian school, great athlete, smart kid. Got married to a girl, beautiful on the inside and out. And he shared this story with me. I met him when I was speaking on the road one time. And he said to me, you know, I married this girl of my dreams. Everything was going awesome. He said, but I had a little secret that started, I don't remember exactly when it started. He said, but I know it continued through college. And I was absolutely convinced that when I got married, quote, and got the real thing, that this issue would just fade away and take care of itself. Well, about 6 or 8 months into their marriage, she discovered just something that came up on his phone, that he was looking at pornography. Well, as a woman, or anybody whose spouse is looking at pornography, instantly she thinks, what's the matter with me? Have I failed him? Am I not beautiful? Sowed seeds of distrust. And within a year, this wonderful couple, in their lower to mid-20s, because the devastation of pornography, were already divorced. Now, why do I tell you that? Because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, he would give almost anything to go back and sit where you are seated this morning. Hear a message that he heard in some ways, but didn't apply to his life. So look at this morning as just kind of a shake-up saying this issue matters profoundly and will shape the trajectory of your life. So if you haven't figured out yet, my topic is word that begins with P and it ends with ornament. And it's not about popcorn, as a junior hire shouted out one time. When I said, oh, popcorn. I'm like, no, that's not the direction we're going. Well, I discovered when it comes to an issue, a smart place to begin with is the definition. Technically, pornography comes from the Greek writings about prostitutes. So, graphe means to write, porno refers to prostitution. So if you want to understand the effects that pornography has on society and relationships, it's the same dynamic as prostitution. Now, a more technical definition would be this. An image, sound, or word, or words, that is meant to sexually arouse. So sometimes you've seen pictures of like Michelangelo's picture of David. Well, David is naked, but that's not considered pornography because it's not depicted and wasn't created in a way to sexually arouse. Now, do these lines get blurred? Of course they do. But in principle, in fact, I think a lot of pornography is passed off as art, and it's justified because people say it's art. But in principle, the distinction is that pornography is an image, its words, or its sound meant to sexually arouse. That's what we mean by pornography. Now, there's 3 ways that your generation is experiencing pornography where the landscape, so to speak, has changed since the experience of, say, your parents or your grandparents. There's probably more than this, but one way is that the kind of pornography that's available is much more aggressive than the kinds of pornography in the past. Yes, I realize aggressive needs one more G. This was in Time last year. Peggy Ornstein, Time magazine, wrote this. She said, producers of porn have one goal, to get men off hard and fast for profit. That means eroticizing the degradation of women. In studied behaviors in popular porn, nearly 90% of random scenes contain physical aggression toward women, who nearly always responded neutrally or with pleasure. More insidiously, women would sometimes beg their partners to stop, then acquiesce and begin to enjoy the activity regardless of how painful or debasing. The kinds of pornography accessible just one click away is much more debasing, much more insidious, much more aggressive than the pornography of generations before. Second, it's much more acceptable. It's much more acceptable. There used to be a cultural stigma to pornography that now in many ways is largely gone. So according to a Barna study that my father's ministry commissioned last year, of your generation, 9 out of 10 young men, 13 to 24, say how they talk about porn with friends is encouraging, accepting, or neutral. 90% of people your age, according to this study, say it's accepting or it's neutral. The stigma is essentially gone. Now this next study I'm going to show you totally surprised me. I'm curious if it surprised you or not. Do you know that teens and young adults rank not recycling as more immoral than viewing pornography? Now how many of you that genuinely surprises you? Let me see your hands. Almost all of you, interesting. That shocked me. I thought not recycling is worse than looking at pornography. That gives us an insight to how far our culture has gone and how widely acceptable pornography has become. Third, pornography is much more available than it's been in the past. And this is probably pretty obvious. Given certain technological devices, pornography is much more available. If you ask your parents or grandparents, and by the way, you're thinking, why would I talk to my parents about this? You know what? I hope you do. I hope you'd be willing to have a conversation with your parents about this topic, as awkward as that can be. And my son is 13, and basically when he was 8, he heard this talk, and we started having just conversations. Not all the time, trust me, but just so he would understand he could talk to me about things. One of the worst things you can do is bury stuff inside and just not talk to somebody about it. Well, pornography, if you go back to your parents' or grandparents' generation, essentially somebody who wanted to get pornography, they had to go to a seedy part of town, walk up to a counter, talk to someone face to face, get a magazine, put it in a bag, and kind of try to hide it somewhere or stash it. Now you don't have to see somebody. It's entirely accessible digitally. So in a 2008 film, Seth Rogen played a character called Zach and Miri Make a Porno, in which he says it's all mainstream now, trying to talk his intended lover into making a porn film with him. That was 2008. And I think he's absolutely right. And of course, the spread of pornography with virtual reality, with cell phones, etc. Now, here's just a sense of how vast this issue is. Do you know one of the largest porn sites, this is one, says it gets 2.4 million visitors every hour. One site. Can you imagine that? Just one. Of practicing male Christians, of those who not only say they're Christians, but practice their faith, read the Bible, go to church, 41% actively seek out porn at least once or twice a month. That means essentially if you go to a church on a Sunday morning, 4 out of 10 are actively seeking out pornography. Now one of the things that surprised me when I first studied this issue, very few things surprise me now, is that this is not just a male issue. Please hear me on this. Pornography addiction and temptation is not just a male issue. It's a human issue. And here's what can happen. Although stigma, tell them I'll call back. Although stigma outside of our culture, that was not planted, stigma outside of the Christian church is largely gone when it comes to pornography. Within the church, there's still a sense that this is wrong. So here's what often happens with girls who feel tempted or struggle with pornography. They think, number one, a Christian's not supposed to do this, and second, it's worse for a girl. That's what girls will often tell themselves, and sometimes feel a deeper sense of shame. So while most of the examples that I give are people quoting, talking about men, because more men do look at pornography than women, please realize this is a human issue, okay? So a study that shows 41% of men would say 13% of practicing females, 13 to 24, actively seek out porn. Another study shows that about 30% of pornography is viewed by women, 30%. Now, the reality is, the kind of pornography that draws women tends to be different than the kind of pornography that draws a man. It tends to be. So over the past maybe 3 to 4 years, you've heard of these books and movies, 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Freed, and 50 Shades Darker. How many of you have read them? I'm just kidding, you don't have to raise your hand. Now, in case you're not familiar with this, I'm guessing most of you are, these books were released, and it's about a man by the name of Christian Grey who has a tortured, abusive past. So a young girl named Anastasia, young girl meaning she's just out of college, who is a virgin and kind of pure the opposite of him, falls for him. And she not only gives herself sexually to him, but she allows herself to be involved in all sorts of not only kinky but physically abusive kinds of sex to free him. That's the idea. I read a doctor's review of this. He said, it only ever works out in film. It doesn't work in real life. I have to deal with the victims. Trust me. But the reason this is attractive to many women is it's a story, because it involves emotion. I can't tell you how many women, even some of my wife's friends, are like, it's just a story. That's nonsense. But I'll tell you something a lot of people miss, is you go back 3, 4, 5 years, and men and women were searching for different kinds of sexual activity through porn sites. This year, it seems that the gap is closing. The kinds of erotic activity that girls are searching for is beginning to mirror the kinds that guys are. Very interesting cultural trend. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 of the biggest myths that I hear, some from Christians, from non-Christians. They pepper our culture, and I'm going to show you the other side. But before we go further, please let me just plant an idea in your mind. This is really important. In some sense, pornography is just a symptom. Like any other addiction or sin in our lives, pornography is a symptom of a deeper brokenness. So think about like the root of the tree. Pornography is the fruit in the sense, and I don't mean that in a positive sense, obviously, but it's if you take a tree, a fruit reveals what the tree is, but its real heart and core goes back to its roots. So the question is, what's the root issue? Are you ready? I want you to write this down. Dr. Paul Warren said this: an addiction is something that is used to fill the void that a relationship is meant to fill. An addiction is something that is used to fill the void that a relationship is meant to fill. An addiction is something that is used to fill the void of what a relationship is meant to fill. What does that mean? God has designed us to be in relationship with God and relationship with other people. If we do not have healthy, intimate relationships, vertically with God, horizontally with other people, something is broken in our lives, and the counterfeit lies of our culture, materialism, consumerism, success, pornography, begin to come in and try to fill the void that a relationship is meant to fill. So we're going to talk about pornography, but please know that when it's all said and done, to help process through this and get healthy, we have to have healthy relationships with God and healthy relationships with other people. That's why Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love God and to love other people. All right, so let's jump in and take a look at 3 myths. Number 1, it doesn't affect me. You ever been tempted to think that? It doesn't affect me. 71% of Swedish adolescents believe pornography influenced the behavior of their peers. Only 29% believed it influenced their own behavior. If you think, oh, I'm different and it doesn't affect me, there's only one person you're fooling, and it's yourself. I had a student come in my high school class. I tell my students, I say, we can talk about anything, as long as we're seeking truth, we're respectful, and we give a biblical perspective, let's talk about it. So one day the topic of pornography came up and we were just discussing it. I could tell the student sitting in the back was getting bothered by this physically, and I knew by that, I was like, this is an issue to some degree in his life. By the way, great family. One of the Bible students in my semester, a great athlete, comes walking up afterwards. He goes, Mr. McDowell, this is right before lunch break, after 6th period. He goes, Mr. McDowell, can we talk? I was like, no, it's lunch break. I mean, no, I'm kidding. Just kidding. I said, step in my office, which was a desk in the middle of my classroom. He sat down, I said, what's up? Before he could say anything, this guy, macho athlete, stud, puts his head down in his arms like this and just starts to cry intensely, so much so that I go give him Kleenex. And he finally kind of gathers himself. I said, what's going on? He goes, I don't know what to do. It was for 6 months, 5 or 6 months. I'll go to my room at night, turn the lights off. My parents think I'm going to sleep. Pull my computer, my phone, my iPad, and I just look at pornography for hours. I can't stop. He said, my dad will ask me to my face, are you protecting your eyes? He goes, Mr. McDowell, I have looked my dad in the eyes and lied to him for months. What do I do? First thing I said is, thank you for trusting me enough to share that with me. This is the absolute right first step. I'm proud of you for taking it. Know that God can heal you if you want him to. I said, but let me ask you a question before we get to that. How has it affected you? He said, well, number one, I feel guilty all the time. He said, number two, I can't look at a woman without undressing her in my mind. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me. The journalist Pamela Paul, not a Christian as far as I know, she said, a single 20-something graphic designer told me he'd find himself in bars berating himself over the way he scanned potential dates. I'd be saying, no, her breasts are too small, she's not worth it, then wonder, who have I become? Why am I judging women like this? You see, here's what happens. If you look at pornography, whether you want it to or not, you are conditioning yourself to look at and treat human beings as objects that you use for your own pleasure, rather than as persons you love for their individual value. You look at pornography, you are conditioning yourself to objectify other people, whether men or women. So Dr. Gary Brooks put it this way from Texas A&M University. He said, the problem with softcore pornography is that it's voyeurism. It teaches men to view women, and you could say the verse as well, as objects rather than to be in relationships with women as human beings. He's right. You look at pornography, and you are conditioning and teaching yourself to objectify other people. St. Augustine said we're supposed to love people and use money. But the reality is, we love money and we use people. Pornography conditions us not to love people as beings who bear the image of God, but as objects that are used for pleasure. The last Pope, John Paul, actually 3 popes ago, John Paul II, he said this. He said, the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much. The problem with pornography is it shows too little. What do you mean by that? I think, wait a minute, people take their clothes off, how can it not show too much? He's saying pornography reduces sex down purely to the physical. Because the reality is, sex is relational, it's emotional, it's spiritual. Pornography doesn't show enough and give an accurate depiction of the beauty and goodness and design of sex. So it warps somebody's mind about sexuality and reduces it solely to the physical. You see, I want you to think of something you have in your mind called a script. Okay, now when you think of script, you think like a movie script, right? It's kind of like that. Basically, a script is, you all have tons of scripts in your mind. Think of it as a way you're supposed to act and behave in a certain environment. So you have a script, and I have a script about how you behave in an elevator. You ever notice that? Like, if you don't walk into an elevator, if someone's sitting on this side and there's two of you are standing there, first off, you don't even sit in an elevator, right? That'd be awkward. If someone is on this side, you don't walk over and look at them and be like, hey, what's up? Why? First off, you need your space. Number two, generally don't talk in an elevator, right? You don't walk in and face the back, face the door, even though it's closed, right? Have you ever noticed? There's all these ways we just behave in an elevator. Some are common sense, others we picked up just by watching people. Well, there's also a script of how you behave in a football game, right? If the ref makes a bad call, boo him. Or if it's hockey, cuss at him. If your team scores, stand up and cheer. Right? If you give $5 to the person next to you, in a matter of time, peanuts or nachos or a soda or cotton candy will come back to you. Right? Try that in an elevator. Hey, when the guy comes by, can you give my money? I need some peanuts. Like, they would look at you like you're nuts. Because that's not how you act. You have a script in your mind how you act in a conference, how you walk down a hall, walk down the street, go to the library. Our minds are full of scripts. Most of these scripts we pick up subconsciously just by observing how people behave. Have you ever wondered where you get your script about sex? What to expect? How you're supposed to treat somebody? You ever wondered where your ideas come from? I don't know each of you individually, but I know your generation, Gen Z, as a whole unmistakably. The script that shapes your generation about sex is pornography. Hands down. In fact, there was a study called Premarital Sex in America, and the author said this: demand for it, referring to anal sex, is largely psychological in the mind, and the result of a porn-inspired script about the anticipated pleasures of anal sex. In other words, somebody's seen it in pornography, the person's smiling, it looks fun, it must be great, so demand increases because they've developed ideas and a mindset about sex from pornography. So let's ask this question: what is the script of porn? What is the idea or worldview that when someone looks at pornography, they're teaching themselves? Well, number one is this: that sex is best experienced outside of a loving relationship. By the way, pornography means writings about... Okay, this is the participatory part of the program. Pornography means writings about prostitutes. By definition, a prostitution is not an ongoing relationship with somebody you know. It's a one-night stand. Pornography is the same. Look, it's not about married couples with kids. That's not what pornography is about. In fact, some time ago I saw this Carl Jr. commercial. I was about as angry as I've been in a long time, except when Kawhi Leonard went down, when the Golden State Warriors took a cheap shot. That's a separate issue. I was watching this Carl Jr. commercial, and they had Hugh Hefner. If you don't know who Hugh Hefner is, he's the founder of Playboy magazine. So he's all for sexual liberty and the ways defined in our culture. He stands in his classic red robe, takes a bite of a chicken burger, takes a bite of a beef burger. And he goes, you know what? Some guys like something different every night. And then you see this blonde, brunette, and a redhead. You know what the message is? Variety is the spice of life. When it comes to a burger, you don't want to eat the same burger every night. That's boring. When it comes to sex, you need variety. In fact, outside of a loving relationship, that's the most exciting sex. You see the message of that commercial? That's the message of pornography. That's the message. If you look at it, you're vitally teaching yourself that. Well, look, I wrote a book, it's actually in the back, called Ethics, and I have a chapter making the case for biblical view of sexuality. And there was an article in USA Today a few years ago. The title was, Aha, Call It the Revenge of the Church Ladies. You know what the study showed? They said, despite all appearances to the contrary, it's actually women who follow the biblical commandments and pattern for sex that are having the most in terms of quantity and the best in terms of quality sex on the face of the planet. Can I get an amen? Amen. Okay, good. Now, why would that strike you as odd? Because the message is, in all our songs, all our movies, one night stand, no commitment, that's exciting sex. Now, I'm not going to go into all the reasons. You can read the chapter if that's interesting to you. I'll give you one reason, though. They said, following the biblical pattern for sex sets you more free. You might be thinking, wait a minute, if I have to be committed to one person for life, how am I more free? Isn't Hugh Hefner free? He can have something different every night? Let me tell you, it depends on how you understand freedom. A friend of mine took his youth group to play paintball. How many of you played paintball? Okay, good, most of you have. By the way, when you play paintball, you want that shy, quiet kid in your youth group on your team, because that kid is nuts when you do paintball gun. Some people know who I'm talking about. It's like Jekyll and Hyde, you're awesome, whoa, go get him. Like, dual personality here. Well, one of my friends took his youth group to play paintball. On the way back, they're riding the bus, and there was a student, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years old, talking about, I love paintball. He goes, I love wearing camo. I love shooting, the strategy. He goes, in fact, when I get older, I'm going into the military. This was awesome. Well, what we didn't know is one of the leaders on the trip was a former military veteran. He goes, son, let me tell you something. By the way, side note, if the military veteran says, son or daughter, let me tell you something, that means sit down and shut up. He goes, paintball is fun. Because you know why in paintball? There's no consequences. You get shot, and at best, you know, it hurts, it goes away, or you have a scar, and you'll probably show it off anyways. You lose the game, and you just sit out 5 minutes, come back, play the next game. Shoot your buddy in the head, he's got a mask on. Because paintball is fun, because in paintball, there's no consequences. You're free to play the game without lasting fear. He said, when it comes to war, he goes, son, it's not fun. There's consequences. You get shot in the arm, you lose your arm. Shot in the leg, you lose your leg. Shot in the chest or the head, you might lose your life. You realize the same applies to sexuality. Friends, do you know why people who follow the biblical pattern for sex are more free? You know why? If you find someone you love and stay committed to that person for life, you don't have to worry about being compared to somebody else. You don't have to worry about sexually transmitted diseases. You don't have to worry about abortion. You don't have to worry about the person leaving you. You are free to love this person intimately and be loved back. That's real freedom. But pornography mocks the institution of marriage. Hebrews 13:4 says, keep the marriage bed pure. Pornography absolutely mocks that which God says is holy. The second scripted point is that all women want sex from men. Women, essentially, you're reduced to a sex object that men can use. You guys remember the last election, there was a war on women, how conservatives, because they're taking away, or they want to take away the right to abortion, war on women. That is such nonsense. The real war on women is pornography. Thank you, I knew there was at least one Baptist here. Pornography, I need to write a post on this. The real war on women that dehumanizes women and makes them objects is pornography. Can you imagine? I mean, all the freedoms and advances women have made with jobs, etc. in our culture. Pornography comes along and wants to strip it all away. And yes, pun intended. 3, you like that one? Women, like all sexual acts, men perform and demand. If a man wants it, a woman is there to give it. This is the script. Anything a man demands, a woman is there to serve, so to speak, to use the language. And 4th, any woman who does not at first realize this can be persuaded with a little force. If she says no, she's just playing hard to get it. Which is why there's all these cases now of date rape. She wanted it, she didn't want it. She said yes, later said no, and on and on and on. Because men and women have looked at pornography. They assume when she says no, like they do in pornography, eventually she'll end up saying yes, I'm glad, so they push through, but it doesn't work out in real life the way it did in porn. Friends, that is the lie of pornography. It doesn't affect me. Look, you can look this article up and read it for yourself. This is online, Google it. These researchers got together in 2012. They didn't do new research. They gathered every peer-reviewed journal article they could find on adolescents, 12 to 17, and how pornography affects them. Google it, it's all there. Here's what they said on the effects of pornography. You want to be able to write this down. Those who look at pornography in their adolescence, more likely to be distracted by thoughts of sex, have more permissive sexual attitudes, believe men should be more dominant than women, accept the notion of casual sex, engage in sexually risky behavior, engage in sexual harassment, be sexually aggressive, have insecurities about their sexual abilities, express insecurities about their body image, and have clinical symptoms of depression. It doesn't affect me is an unmistakable myth. How about this one? Oh, I'll quit later though. I'll quit later. Like the story I told at the beginning, the young man who thought, when I get the real thing and get older, I'll quit, but he didn't realize how deeply his decisions about pornography shaped his brain. So if you want to understand how addiction works and how our choices affect us, let's look at the brain. Now, Dr. Joe McElhaney in his book, Hooked, says, the human brain is without question the most complicated 3-pound mass in the universe. Did you know that? There's more neurons in your brain than there are internet connections in the world. Your brain is the most sophisticated system in the universe. And I don't mean this brain just for the record. Neuroscientists used to believe that the human brain was formed by adolescence. It was done and it became molded almost like cement and stayed that way through your life. Now you'll hear people talk about the plasticity of the brain, neuroscientists. That the younger you are, your decisions affect the rest of your life. It's more moldable. The older you get, it's less plastic, but it still can be changed and adapted based on our beliefs. But we now know the brain's not really fully formed until between 25 and 30 years of age. Did you realize that? The brain doesn't even fully mature until 25 to 30 years of age. And do you know the part that is least developed in the teenage years? The part of the brain responsible for decision making. I'm not making this up, because my brain is fully formed. Here's some parts of the brains that might be helpful. Number one, we have what are called neurons, which are the main cells of the brain. Second, we have support cells that get rid of waste and support the neurons. Then you have something called synapses. And we're going to stop and look at this for a moment. And I want you to write this down. This phrase I'm going to put up here is vital that you understand this. You ready? Neurons that fire together wire together. I didn't make this up. This is a common phrase you'll hear if you read in the world of neuroscience. Neurons that fire together wire together. Neurons that fire together wire together. What does this mean? As you have neurons fire in your brain, certain patterns are formed that become habits, which become character. So let me give you an example. My brother-in-law took this picture of these monkey-type beings when we were on a safari in Tanzania. And I learned something about monkeys. That if you take monkeys and you sew their fingers together, I know what you're thinking. What kind of sick person? Okay, I would never do that to a monkey. I do it to a cat, but I never do it to a monkey. I'm kidding, don't hurt animals. Now, why would somebody tie the fingers of a monkey together? Well, because here's why. Monkeys have individual digits that mirror structurally the individual digits we have and the structure of the brain. So you have different neuronal pathways to allow you to move your individual fingers. So they would take, say, monkeys and sew these two fingers together. When they go to move either finger, what happens? They move together. The two separate pathways neurologically fuse into one. So they untie them, and what happens? They go to move either finger, and they still move together until you retrain the brain to create separate pathways. You see, your choices and your behavior physically shapes the structure of your brain, kind of like a pathway in the forest. If you walk through a forest that nobody's gone through, you can take a number of different paths. The first time you do it, it kind of beats down the brush. What happens after 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 people walk, it becomes a pathway that anyone through that forest just walks down without even thinking about it. Like Stephen Curry's amazing jump shot. He doesn't think about it every time. He's practiced. It's just second nature. He shoots it because he's wired that into his brain. Here's another way to think about it. You'll definitely want to write this down. Think of something called a love apple. So in the Middle Ages, when a lover was separated from his or her lovey, you might call him or her a beloved, they could not text each other. They couldn't check Facebook updates. They couldn't even go the extra mile and pick up the phone and talk in person. They were separated, so they thought, how can we be as close and remember each other when they're apart? So someone got the idea that they'd take an apple, cut it up into different slices. The woman would take a slice or two, put it in her armpit, close her armpit, and let it soak for hours so it had her scent. So when the man was gone and remembered her and thought of her, he could pull out the apple. Ah, it's like she was there. I noticed all of you quit taking notes except that guy. No, I'm kidding. I'm telling you why, because words you use right now are disgusting, nasty, and gross to describe this. Why? Because you live in a culture, and so do I, in which we try to shun body odor. You shower in the morning, hopefully, put on deodorant, and then put on a little Old Spice swagger to have a different scent, right? Maybe Axe spray. Well, in a lot of cultures in the world, they don't do this. Don't believe me, just go to France. Throughout the history of the world, most people didn't have running water, deodorant, and perfume like we have it. We take all this for granted. So people would be born into the world, and they would smell body odor as babies, continue to smell it through their life. So not only not find body odor repulsive, but the brain would be formed in a way that would find it attractive. So all other things being equal, if you were reported back to the Middle Ages and I gave this example, you'd be like, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Anybody got an apple? That's how you'd be thinking. Okay, what's the whole point of this? Are you ready? Friends, if you look at pornography, your brain becomes trained to sexually cue a computer. You actually physically shape your brain like the fingers of a monkey that are fused together, like a pathway in the forest, and like our response to certain smells. The brain becomes physically trained to cue a computer. You know what the problem is? When somebody looks at images on the computer, which are photoshopped, they're airbrushed, they're of people that pretty much none of us look like in real life, then people go to experience sex the way God designed it. They have shaped their brains to look at an image on a screen or on a cell phone, and it doesn't translate to real life. Pamela Paul said this. She said, boys who look at pornography excessively, and this could be girls as well, it's just her quote, become men or women who connect arousal purely with the physical, losing the ability to become attracted by the particular features of a given partner. Instead, they recreate images from pornography in their brain while they're with a real person. Look, I'll never forget, I must have been somewhere between 9 and 10 years old. My dad was speaking, this is 3 decades ago, at a conference on sexuality. And a girl came up afterwards who at that time taught at a Christian school, probably all of you have heard of. She says to my dad, Mr. McDowell, I don't know what to do. He said, what's the problem? She said, I cannot be with my husband and him reach a sexual climax with me unless there's a Playboy on the pillow next to my head. Number one, how demeaning to that woman. Number two, why? He had filled his mind and shaped his brain with images that prevented him from loving the wife of his youth. Don't give me the nonsense that it doesn't affect me. Don't give me the nonsense, oh, I'll just quit later. And there's another part of the brain that might be helpful as well, what are called neurochemicals. Neurochemicals are basically responsible for different messages sent throughout parts of the brain and part of the body. Now, one neurochemical you're all familiar with is dopamine. Dopamine is called the reward chemical. It makes us feel good, either taking risks or pushing ourselves physically. So I put a picture of a roller coaster up there. If you're waiting in line for a roller coaster, you kind of have a little anticipation, right? You go on the roller coaster afterwards, everyone's like, that was awesome, because dopamine is flooding your body, making you feel good. And you like to run, you get a runner's high, what happens? Dopamine is released in your body. If you exercise, you get a certain natural high from exercising, which is good. If God didn't design the body this way, nobody would exercise. Well, God has designed this chemical to be released at certain times in our life. You know what drugs do? They skip this whole process, trigger the neurotransmitters and the release of neurochemicals to get an instant high. Drugs like speed, etc., or ecstasy. Did you know that the exact same neurochemicals in the body are released and cause an instant high when somebody looks at pornography. Exact same chemicals in some of the most potent and addictive drugs. But here's the difference. Please hear me. You tell me, if you take a drug and want the same high the next time, what do you have to do? More, greater quantity, or a stronger drug. That's not true for pornography. You know what it is? It's variety. You know what that means? People look at pictures of nudity and say, oh, it doesn't do it for me anymore, because their neurochemicals are seared and it's not creating the same high. Now I've got to look at sex, and then I have to look at oral sex, and then anal sex, and then group sex. And in so many cases, if that person keeps going down that train, so to speak, it ends up looking at depictions of nudity of children. In many cases, the next step is people act it out. Don't tell me I'll just quit later, or it doesn't affect me. Another chemical in the body is called oxytocin. It's in men and women, but particularly strong in women. Now, oxytocin is called the bonding hormone. When this chemical is released in your body, it creates a desire to connect with someone. So they've done tests, it's amazing, of people playing these high-stakes financial games. Some were given oxytocin, some were given a placebo. And those who were given oxytocin, unbeknownst, were more likely to trust people with their money than those who weren't. It creates a desire for trust, a desire for bonding. That's how powerful this chemical is. Now, biblically, if you look at the purpose of sex, you realize there's 4 purposes. Number 1, Genesis 1, multiply and fill the earth. In other words, the purpose of sex is to make babies. Now, if you did not know that, now is the time to quietly excuse yourself. Genesis 2 gives the second purpose. Genesis 2:24 says, and the two shall become one. Now, this is almost as cool as the ascension of Jesus yesterday on Jim Wallace's slide. Are you ready? Boom. The two shall become one. Now, I used to think, oh, it's a spiritual oneness. But when I started studying neuroscience, I realized there is a biochemical oneness. You know why? Because oxytocin is released in a woman's body at 3 primary periods and creates a desire for trust. Number 1, when a woman gives birth. When a woman's giving birth, her body's being flowed with oxytocin, which creates this desire for a motherly bond. Number 2, when a woman nurses. If you nurse, ladies, oxytocin is released in your body and creates a bonding with this child. Number 3, during sexual touch or even sexual or romantic gazing. Do you realize that? Sometimes you can look lovingly into somebody's eyes, and these chemicals are released in your body, creating a desire for trust and intimacy. You know what happens? A girl becomes sexually active. She looks at pornography. Oxytocin is released at inopportune times. Doesn't destroy, but damages the bonding mechanism that God has put in place. Now for men, what's the oxytocin equivalent? And don't say testosterone. It's called vasopressin. Vasopressin, some scientists call it the monogamy molecule. This molecule, when it's released in men, this neurochemical, creates a desire to be faithful to his kids and bond to his spouse. Some of you are like, I know some men who need some more of this. Where can I get some? Well, here's something that's very interesting. There's this animal called a prairie vole. And one thing about this animal is this is one of the few kinds of animals that actually are sexually monogamous or faithful to an animal of the opposite sex. So a male vole will match up with a female vole. They'll make vole babies and actually stay faithful to each other for life. This is rare in nature. So guess what scientists found inside prairie voles? High amounts of vasopressin. So some scientists got an idea and some funding from you, actually probably not from you, from your parents, to see what would happen if they block the release of vasopressin in these prairie voles. You know what happened? So these prairie voles, who are sexually faithful to their spouse and care for their kids for life, you block the release of vasopressin, and these male hamsters start sleeping around. And that's kind of messed up, isn't it? Now, we're not just animals. What does this show? The power of these chemicals God's put inside of us. God has designed you, men and women. He actually has designed you to not be sexually active until you're married, and then to marry one person of the opposite sex and stay faithful to that person for life. It's when we follow God's design that we're most free. When we follow that, we're most free. Now, let me look at the third one here for sake of time. Myth number 3, I'm not hurting anyone. You ever heard that? People say, oh, it doesn't affect me, I'll quit later, I'm not hurting anybody. Let me tell you something as clear as I can. Every sin hurts someone, period. Every sin hurts someone, period. It hurts God, it hurts other people, and it hurts you. Hands down, no exceptions. But there's a letter online, you're welcome to look it up, that I found moving. It's called Anonymous Letter to Porn-Watching Dad. Where this girl in her 20s writes a letter to her father and says, Dad, I love you, you're amazing, but I want you to know how your porn habit affected me as a teenager and how it still affects me today. She says, when I was 12, I came across porn on your computer, not looking for it. She said, instantly I started to realize that Mom was not the only woman that you were looking at. She said, all your talks about how beauty was on the inside meant nothing. The message you really sent was that if I was to be loved, I had to look like women on magazine covers and those who act in porn movies. She said, in fact, when my friends came over when I was in high school, I wondered if you looked at them as my friends or sex objects in your fantasies. She said, no girl should have to even think that about the man who's supposed to protect her. She goes on and on. Finally, she says, I recently met a man and we got married. One of the first things I asked him was, do you look at pornography? And she said, thank God he doesn't. But I still have this deep-seated sense of distrust for men because of your looking at porn as I grew up. Friends, if you think pornography isn't hurting anybody, again, there's only one person you're fooling, which is you. Let me tell you something as clear as I can. My goal this morning is not to make you feel guilty. It's not to pile on you, whether you're addicted or even looked at this a few times and you feel bad or anywhere in between. That's not my purpose. My main purpose is to shake you up a little bit, understand the gravity of this issue, what's at stake, give you a moment to stop and reflect on your life. And hopefully, if this has been an issue for you, have the courage to just take a step towards healing, and I promise you, for the rest of your life, you will reap dividends from doing that. Friends, I had no idea how much my choices when I was your age would seep into my marriage even right now. I married my high school sweetheart. My first memory of my wife was when I was in 3rd grade. Grew up in a small town in the mountains of San Diego. My friend Jesse's like, you see that girl Stephanie? I want you to sit by her and ask her if she thinks I'm cute. 3rd grade. I sat by her and asked her. I don't remember what she said, but the bottom line is I married her and he didn't. When I explain one of my favorite songs, the 80s song, Jesse's Girl, yes! Every time it comes on, I'm like, yep, that's my girl. So, my wife and I dated for 10 years. For 10 years. There were a lot of opportunities to push the boundaries sexually. In fact, when we got engaged, I'll tell you this. Kind of funny thing about it. We got engaged, downtown San Diego at the Marriott. Asked her to marry me, she said yes, and I gave her a big kiss. I didn't care if people around, I'm like, I'm marrying her. And I gave her a big kiss, I'm like, whoa, like I felt something change because we're going to get married. And I remembered a lot of my friends who would get engaged, they're like, you know what, I'm going to marry her, it's only a matter of time, let's go ahead and be sexually active, it doesn't matter. And I remember thinking, that just doesn't strike me as wise. So I went to my wife, we weren't married yet, and I said, 6 months we're going to be married. To err on the side of just being smart and not letting any sin seep in. Let's not even kiss until you walk down the aisle. And at first she goes, what, you can't handle yourself? I'm like, that's not the response I was looking for. And then she goes, and then she thought about it a little more. She's like, I totally get it. I respect that. Let me tell you, it took all the pressure away. There was no pressure. I promised to her, we committed before the Lord, there was no pressure during that 6 months. We just knew it. You know why it affects me even today? Because I have friends who decided to be sexually active when they were younger. Decided when they were engaged to just go ahead and be sexually active to their spouse they were going to marry. Guess what happens? I'm on the road away from my kids. I meet them tonight at a basketball tournament. We're going to Vegas. My 13-year-old's in a basketball tournament. I'm flying in to meet my family there. You know one thing my wife has not been thinking over the past few days while I've been here? I wonder if Sean is sleeping around. I wonder if he's looking at pornography. She's not thinking that. Do you know if we had messed around while we were dating or during that engagement period, you know what she'd be thinking? Gosh, he was willing to push the limits then and do things that weren't right. I wonder if he's doing that now. You see why God gives us guidelines. God is not about stealing our fun. God is not about controlling us. God says, look, I designed you to function a certain way. God says sex is beautiful and it's good. He goes, and it's fun. I mean, God could have made sex like, you pinky swear and a kid pops out. He's God, he could have done that. Right? He could have. I just looked around and a couple of you were like, let's try it. Never going to pinky swear again the same. Someone asked about this session, what was it about? It was about pinky swearing. 2 things to remember, pinky swears and a big bang means a big banger, right? Those are the 2 things you learn from McDowell. Sex is good, sex is beautiful, but God gives us boundaries and guidelines to protect us and to set us free. So what do? I'm going to go a few minutes over. You'll make it on time to your session, but this is so important. I'm going to go. If you have to go, go ahead, but if you walk out, we are all going to look at you. No, I'm just kidding. We are not. If you have to go, I get it. Number 1, very simple, put a filter on your devices. Just do it. Put a filter on your devices. Now, there's a number of very good companies that do this. XXXchurch.com. I love Covenant Eyes. I put it on all our devices. Computer, phones, tablets. Now, what happens is every single week on my computer, it sends an update to my wife. I just put it, not because every week she's like, let's see what he's looking at this week. No, I just said, I want you to know and see that I'm trying to live with integrity. I want you to know that. This is not a sign of weakness. I think it's a sign of strength. Admitting that we can all be tempted. Admitting that we all have a sinful nature. So the first step to do, even if you say, yeah, this isn't a huge issue for me, model it for other people. Get Covenant Eyes for a minimal fee on your phone, on your other devices. Smart way to build accountability. Second is this. Experience God's grace through confession and accountability. If you are sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this was such a big deal, I'm going to work harder and commit by my own strength to not look at pornography. Let me tell you as clear as I can, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. Do you know Alcoholics Anonymous is based on biblical principles? What's the first step? Hi, my name is X, and I'm an alcoholic. Second, you recognize you can't defeat it on your own. You need people around you and a higher source. That's where it starts. You can never get healed on this issue if you don't start by saying, God, I've blown it. I'm a sinner, I've fallen short. And I can't do this on my own. But guess what? But you can do it through the power of the Holy Spirit and fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. See, this is what's beautiful about Christianity. Every other religion says, work somehow your way up to God. As long, good deeds better outweigh your bad deeds. Christianity says you can't earn your way to heaven. It's only when you humble yourself, recognize your sin, and invite in the Holy Spirit to come into your life, to begin to change you and transform you from the inside out. That's why Paul says, when I am weak, I am strong. I really believe it's only when God's grace seeps through every ounce of your body and soul, and you realize Not that God is looking down going, what? You go to Momentum, you go to youth group, you look at pornography, shame on you. If people knew what you did, they would never look at you the same. That is pure satanic message. That's what it is. Jesus is looking down and saying, I made you in my image, and I love you, and I forgive you. Like the father in the prodigal son in Luke 15. You know what the prodigal son said to his dad? Give me my inheritance now. Basically, Dad, you're dead to me. You're dead to me. And when he squandered it in wild living. It says when he was far off, his father saw him. You know what that means? I think every day that father went to the window, opened up the curtains, and looked out, thinking, maybe today is the day my son will come home. Runs out and meets him. The son has an excuse. He goes, we don't have time for that. You're my son. I love you. Let's celebrate. Because you were lost, but now you're found. Friends, do you know that you have a heavenly Father who loves you deeply? It's Satan who's the accuser. It's Jesus who said, I died for this. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So let me say a couple things, then I'll wrap up. Number one, we talked about the wiring of the brain. You know what studies show? If you stop looking at pornography, the brain slowly begins to heal itself. There's actually a process where it will start to default back to the way it's meant to operate. You have to. With the help of other people. When you stop, the brain begins to restore itself. Second, you know what Philippians 4 says? Think about things that are lovely and worthy and beautiful. You start to take these pornographic ideas and images and replace them with ideas of beauty and ideas of purity and a Christian worldview and healthy relationships. And you take the junk that pornography has put in there, you begin to replace it with something beautiful. And it says in Romans 12:2, we are transformed by the renewing of our minds. That's the beautiful process that God has designed. I have seen people from decades of addiction to some of the most aggressive, perverse pornography be transformed from the inside out. And yes, there's damage in their life and other people, but be restored and experience healthy relationships. Because we worship a God of second, third, fourth, infinite chances who loves us. Amen? Amen. Last thing you could do that might help is this talk is actually up at my website. And I had somebody contact me this week and they said, I heard you a few years ago give this talk somewhere else, and I've been so moved I wanted to share it with my small group. So I sent him notes on the talk. They watched it and talked about it. I thought, here's somebody who not only is trying to get his life right with the Lord, but is saying, I want to help people around me. You realize you can make a difference. If you're homeschooled, show this or another one. It doesn't have to be mine. This is just one resource for you. Show it to a homeschool group. Show it to your youth pastor. Show it to your youth group. Post it on Facebook. Send it to some friends. Or whatever other resource you find helpful on this, do something with it. Do something. I get emails all the time from young people who say they did this. I'm like, yes, that person got it and made a difference. Go for it. All right? Now the last thing is this. You guys came, so you get a special deal. I wrote a book called Ethics, Being Bold in a Whatever World, in which I have a small section talking about pornography. The question I'm asking is, number one, how do you make right choices? How do you stand up and be bold? How do we think Christianly about issues of like pro-life? How do you make a case for pro-life when your friends press you on this? There's a whole chapter on how do you know God's will. Well, it's normally $10. It is my cost back there, essentially, for $5. Since you came to the session, and to be honest with you, I don't want to bring them home. I'm not going to lie. They're $5 if you want. Last time I did this, youth pastor walked up and bought a whole box. So everyone was like, I didn't get it. I said, you better hurry. $5 is basically the price of Starbucks. I call Starbucks coffee $5 because everything costs $5. So it's back there during this session. If you want one for you or a friend in your group, only $5. It's in the back. Take advantage of it. Thanks for coming to my set.